everyone and welcome back to Mathematics with Usman. This is the third tutorial in my series on the topic coordinate geometry. And today I am going to be teaching you the gradient of perpendicular and parallel lines. The only objective that we have to attain in today's tutorial is finding the relation between the gradient of two parallel and perpendicular lines. In order to understand the two parallel lines, let us first draw the Cartesian plane, in which 1 centimeter on the x-axis represents 1 unit and 1 centimeter on the y-axis also represents 1 unit. Let us draw the line in this Cartesian plane. If we need to find the gradient of this line, you already know in my previous tutorial how we can come up with. For 1 unit in x direction, we will see how many units the line is moving in the vertical direction. For this particular line, for 1 unit in x direction, it is moving 2 units in the vertical direction. So in order to find the gradient of this line, we will simply divide its vertical distance, which is 2, with the horizontal distance, which is 1 unit. So the gradient of this line is 2 over 1 equals to 2. Let us now draw another line which is going side by side with it, having the same direction and having the same gradient. Now if we need to find the gradient of the second line, we again have to consider 1 unit in x direction, for which how many units the line is moving in the vertical direction, and it is moving 2 units in the vertical sense. If we need to find the gradient of the second line, the gradient is again 2 units in the vertical sense and 1 unit in the denominator, which is in the horizontal sense. So the gradient of both the lines is equals to 2 over 1, or you simply can say it is 2. We can consider another case in which the line, instead of rising, it is falling down like this. And if we need to consider the gradient of this line, we have to see the ratio of its vertical distance to the ratio of its horizontal distance. And if we look at it, for every 2 units in x direction, the line is falling down 3 units in the vertical direction. So the gradient of this line will be equals to -3, because it is falling down to the ratio of 2 in the horizontal direction. Now let us draw another line which is parallel to this line and moving in the downwards direction. If we consider the gradient of this line, it is 2 unit in x direction for every 2, 3 units in the vertical direction. So the gradient of this line is again going to be -3 over 2. The point, students, that I want to make here is, if you are having two lines and they are going side by side in the same direction, or simply they are parallel to one another, you will say they share the same gradient. To better understand the concept, let us consider a simple example. Find the gradient of the line L, which is parallel to the line having an equation 2y is equals to 4x plus 3. Students, you see that we are given with two equations, one whose gradient we need to find and the one whose equation is given to us. We will arrange the equation that is given to us in the form y is equals to mx plus c. Now if we arrange this equation in this form, we have to divide this 2 on the right hand side, or dividing each side with 2. What we are going to get? Y will remain y over here. This 4 divided by 2 will give us 2x, and 3 divided by 2 will give us 3 over 2. Now if you compare these two equations, you can clearly see the gradient of the line is the number that is multiplied with the x. So the gradient of this line is equals to 2. And if the other line whose gradient we need to find is parallel, then we can simply say that the gradient of the second line is also equals to 2. So both the lines are having the gradient equals to 2. Students, the concept is very simple but yet very useful for the coming new situation problems where we have to encounter such situations in most of the times. Let us now consider another pair of lines that is perpendicular to one another. In order to find the relationship between the gradient of two perpendicular lines, let us consider a particular line lying in the Cartesian plane. To find its gradient, we will say for 1 unit in x direction, how many units it is moving in the vertical direction. In this particular case, it is moving 1 in x direction, for which there are 2 units in the vertical direction. So the gradient of this particular line is equals to 2 over 1. 2 in y direction, 1 in x direction, and I am purposely leaving it 2 over 1. Now consider another line in red, which is making an angle of 90 degrees with the blue line. Means these both lines are perpendicular to one another. And now if we consider the gradient of this red line, we see that for every 1, 2, 3, 4 units in x direction, 1, 2, it is falling down 2 units in the vertical direction. So the gradient of this red line will be equals to minus 2 units in y direction over 1, 2, 3, 4 units in the vertical direction. And if we simplify it, we will get minus 1 over 2. So the gradient of blue line is 2 over 1 and the gradient of red line is equals to minus 1 over 2. Let us consider one more pair of the perpendicular lines. If we need to find the gradient of this blue line, its gradient is equals to 1, 2 units in x direction, 1, 2, 3. For every 2 units in x direction, it is falling 3 units in the vertical direction. So the gradient of this blue line is equals to minus 3 in y direction, 2 in x direction. So gradient is overall the ratio of minus 3 to 2. Now consider a red line which is perpendicular to this blue line. And the gradient of this red line is equals to 1, 2, 3 units in x direction, for which it is rising 1, 2 units in the vertical direction. So the gradient of this red line will be equals to 2 units in the positive sense in y and 3 units in the positive sense in x. So the ratio is 2 over 3. Now students, there is a clear relationship between the gradient of this pair of perpendicular line and the gradient of this pair of perpendicular line. And that relation is, if you multiply the gradient of these two lines, 2 over 1 multiplied with minus 1 over 2, the gradient of the second line, you will get 2 and 2 will be cancelled out and you are left with minus 1 in the first pair product. And if we find the product of the gradients of the second pair, we are again going to get minus 1. So it is understood that if two lines are perpendicular to one another, their gradients, look, this is 2 over 1, this is minus 1 over 2, they are the negative reciprocal of one another. Just invert the denominators and put the negative sign. If the gradient of one line is minus 3 over 2, then the other line will be inverted 2 over 3 with the negative sign. So negative will make it positive. Or the point that we can make over here is, if we multiply the gradient of two lines, their answer equals to minus 1, or they are the negative reciprocal of one another. This is very basic concept, students, that I encourage you to learn so that you can apply this in the coming problems. And this brings us to the end of today's tutorial. I hope it has some value to your mathematical concept. As always, thank you very much for watching Mathematics with Usman. See you in another tutorial. Till then, it's goodbye.